So first off, I want to thank you as representatives of our church, and you all may have been directly involved, but the thanks goes to a lot of folks in making this happen. But we really got an incredible amount of donation. Dozens of hats and shirts, and it was just through those kind of donations that it made the project happen more easily. And so we had the laminating and the copying. Our church staff just does a marvelous job with almost any project that we get involved. And I just can't thank you and the staff enough for all that we've done in getting the Albinism project where it is. So here's an example of some of the hats. We actually filled, there were 6 of us on the trip. We filled 12 bins, well actually 8 bins, that are those big Rubbermaid bins. We filled 6 of those with hats and clothing, sunscreen, all the items that we were taking along. So over half of our actual luggage was stuff for the Albinism project. And here's a good size crew of the folks who were there early on that day. The day itself, we actually had 18 people come to the school and get the education and the items. But that really was only the start. The fact is, people kept coming by. They heard about this Albinism project. Even if they didn't make it to the market that day, we had 2 people come that evening and show up around dinner time and said, you know, we're suffering albinism. We looked, we actually did the same thing, educated, gave them items, and continued that for the period of time while I was still there. My brother stayed in Togo for another 3 weeks after I left. And what he was doing, among visiting family and other things, was actually going down to the Peace Corps office, which is down in the capital city of Lomé. He went to the Peace Corps office, and lo and behold, the fella who worked as the sort of the person in charge of healthcare in Togo is still there with the Peace Corps. And so he arranged a meeting with him, and so now what we're doing is we're going to work through the Peace Corps volunteers to find out who is suffering albinism in the country and use the Peace Corps volunteers as our distribution network. So as they identify people suffering with albinism throughout the country of Togo, they still have some hats, shirts, and the other items so that they can actually take those items right up into the country and deliver and distribute the product to those suffering. So, you see the last line, I said there'd be a little bit more. There are possible opportunities for more donations moving forward. At least in the way we're thinking about it, we might once or twice a year just put out a bin and say, hey, if you have some long sleeve shirts, some hats like Gilligan wore on Gilligan's Island, you know, those kind of things, put them in the bin, and then we're going to send those over with Togo volunteer parents. Because inevitably, Peace Corps volunteers, families go over, and they can actually continue the distribution of the product right into the country. Now, and then sunscreen we'll probably do in another way, because we're hoping that Ghana or one of the neighboring countries might actually have some sunscreen. But we're still investigating that. So that's a little bit about the Albinism project. Are there specific questions to that? I thought I'd do that for about the first half an hour, and then we'll move to other ahas from Togo. So I have a variety of other things to share with you, but albinism was first and foremost. Yeah, Lee?
A couple of things. How did you judge how much sunscreen, hats, and shirts to bring along?
We took pretty much whatever came in, and we did have to leave some items behind. But it was surely by the amount of stuff, you know, because we were also taking other things for the family, so it was just capacity was our way of deciding.
Where did you get where'd you go to get the dollar sunglasses?
Dollar sunglasses came from George Georgalis, who's an optometrist in the Fort Thomas Presbyterian congregation.
So he scrounged around and got them for you, or what?
Yeah, he through his professional contacts, had relationship with a sunglass manufacturer and said, hey, I think we took over 100 pair of sunglasses. So we're outfitted for a while on the sunglass department. So I said, shoot, if they're $1 a pair, let's just go ahead and take a bunch over. So George got them for $1.
Had enough to pass around?
Yep, and then we also had sunglasses that our congregation had donated. So when we would find someone who didn't suffer albinism, but clearly was farsighted or nearsighted, we'd just pop a pair of glasses and say, does that help? Nope, that one doesn't. How about this one? So, we were sort of amateur opticians, I guess, and went ahead and tried to give them some sunglasses. But we used the UV protection ones as starters as long as a person suffered albinism.
Okay, how do these people support themselves? I mean, what's the economy like down there?
I'll actually get to that a little more in the next part, Lee. It's a good question.
And then your own living conditions, I understand, are pretty primitive.
Right.
But high temperature in the daytime, what?
Yeah. Temperatures between 95 and 105
Did it ever
during the
cool-
day.
Did it ever cool off at night?
That was the most interesting part, was while we were there, the temperature rarely got below about 80 to 85. So even at night, you're feeling the full impact of the heat. And there are no such things as air conditioning. Well, I shouldn't say no such things. Very, very few had air-conditioned vehicles or homes.
Yeah,
So
fans?
fans were the primary way we kept cool. But most households there have no fan, no electricity for that matter. So very unusual. Jim, I know you had a question.
Your little question mark there around authorities arrived for a friendly visit.
Yeah.
Could you say a little bit more about that?
I skipped over that, thank you. This is a sad story, but I say it with a smile because of the friendly visit. My brother, one of the people traveling with us was a former colleague of my brother in the Peace Corps. And they both, while they were in the Peace Corps, they were teachers. So they taught at a local high school, well, at two different schools, but my brother taught math and this fella taught science. And so inevitably we'd be walking down the road and someone would say, Professor Long, and greeting us, and they would come and visit. And so one day, this young man showed up around breakfast time. He looked about the same age as a lot of these other young people who had been their students earlier and now were adults. And so this fella came up and we thought, oh, another one of your students. And he was wearing a military uniform. And we said, oh, hi, how you doing? He said, could I speak with Monsieur Long? Well, this is not the Professor Long kind of thing. And we said, well, yes, he's right here. They said Andrew Long or something. And said, well, here he is. And he handed him a summons. And the summons was, come see the police chief at, I guess it was 4 o'clock in that afternoon. So my brother took this and he handed it to my sister-in-law, who could actually read the document. And it turned out the authorities wanted to talk to my brother because they were afraid of what has happened in Tanzania and some other places. I don't know how many of you have read about this, but it is a really sad story. Those suffering albinism are considered demon-like, and so those people are sometimes used as, they'll take organs and other things from the albino and use them in some of their cultural traditional activities.